about Rumi's thought. Now the foundation stone of Rumi's thought or philosophy agar kehna chahe, or spiritualism, is the concept of love. Now the word love has many meanings. Would you help me in sorting out these various meanings?
Care, affection.
Care, affection.
Devotional love, passionate love, physical attraction,
affection without
for
condition.
the opposite gender as one form of love.
The most common form, if we use the word ishq, everybody is suddenly as if we have pronounced something which is not very acceptable, though it is very attractive to most of the people, but still even in my class of psychology when I was doing, I was attending a PhD seminar of social psychology, and Freud was discussed, and then they were started talking, the students, these PhD students, they started talking about love in the Western sense, sex. Now here we must keep in mind, and even there I pointed out, the professor said why the sex is not acceptable. Everybody said it is acceptable, but instead of using it in some crude sense on the instinctive level, I also said that why shouldn't we substitute the word love? Why Freud was so afraid of the concept of love as it is conceived, for example, in the East. And the professor said, I don't know, I am a Jew, he was also a Jew, I don't know why. But for Rumi, it means spiritual love. It is not physical. This is something about which Rumi is very, very particular. And he, on various occasions, said during his sessions with the students and murids and dervishes that love in the sense in which it is used in our ordinary life. Shall I say in the Bollywood sense and the Hollywood sense, both are rejected by Mawlana Rumi. He believes that it is love for God, this attraction towards God, because our spirit is connected with the divine source of all existence. And we feel this sadness sometimes without any reason or rhyme. I don't know whether you have ever experienced it or not, but this is something which we do experience. Plato too has pointed it out in his dialogues, and he said that sometimes when we look at something which is very, very beautiful, for example, a natural scene, a landscape, and it makes us sad. I don't know whether you have ever passed through that experience. Have you ever experienced that thing or not?
Yeah. Ma'am, sometimes when you look at something very beautiful or a natural scene or something, so you feel a missing connection.
As if something is missing.
Emptiness. Your inner emptiness makes
Don't you ever feel nostalgia?
Yes, ma'am. That kind of
We
feeling.
have seen it somewhere before.
Yes, that deja vu feeling that I've experienced this before, and I'm witnessing it now.
Yes. I think it is, for me it is about that I'm not able to cherish it, or I'm not the part of this thing. So that brings sadness, or that makes me feel that I'm disconnected. So, or maybe I'm misplaced, I need to be there but I'm here. So maybe that brings sadness.
Yeah. So I call it nostalgia. And Rumi's theory and Plato's theory is almost the same. If you remember, when I was teaching Plato, I told you, maybe, I don't know whether we discussed it in detail or not, that beauty, that not ordinary beauty, but something which is sublime. It is called in English literature the sublime. The sublime always creates sadness in our heart. And this is the feeling which Plato says that once we lived in the world, perfect world, the world of beauty, our soul was part of that world, and then something went wrong and the soul was thrown here. Now it doesn't remember much, its remembrance is misty, but still sometimes there is a flash of recollection. And then since you don't remember the whole thing, that what happens, the patient of amnesia, वो जैसे होता है फिल्मों में कि जी चोट लगी भूल गए, then you try to remember it, you also become sad. You remember something and the other parts of the jigsaw puzzle is missing. And that's why we feel sad. Now Rumi has a similar explanation of this sadness, and he says that we have some remembrance of Ahd-e-Alas. Do you know what is Ahd-e-Alas?
Yeah.
The pre-eternal covenant.
The promise we have made with God when we were all souls,
Yeah.
that we are Allah ki bandagi mein, Allah ke bande hain.
He asked us that, am I not your Lord?
Yes.
If you allow me to use the word Lord, that is used in the Bible,
Same thing.
am I not your God, Allah?
And everyone agreed to that.
Yeah.
That's
Bandagi ka jo wada. But we have forgotten that. Rumi says we have forgotten that because we are here so much involved in materialism, in worldly pleasures and success and all the riches we are collecting, and then also sex. Sex is also part of this world. And we have forgotten what we had promised to Allah. And since we have forgotten, sometimes, however, that forgotten memory in the unconscious mind is stirring and it makes us restless. And that's why we need this mystic path or the practice. He calls it the path, the practice or spiritualism. These three means the same thing. They have the same meaning. And he says it is through this path that we can reach our original source of being, our root of existence.
Now, does it mean that when you are on your spiritual journey, तो you मतलब ये जो आपने बात की कि वादा याद आता है?
नहीं, कोई थोड़ा सा कि कुछ हाँ. But what is that? I don't remember.
So वो फिर हमें make us feel sad and make us.
That makes us restless. Sometimes we are restless without any understandable reason, without any rational reason.
Even though we don't understand, because most people are not aware of this ahead that we have done.
No, all of us have forgotten. The human beings have forgotten. ये तो बात तो कर रहे हैं. हाँ.
नहीं मगर ये तो ऐसी belief है ना जैसे I am born in my parents' home. I don't remember the day I was born, but it is still a reality. It can't be changed.
वो और बात है जब आप as a responsible soul you make a promise and then you forget it. That is something else.
And he gives you a sign that you have forgotten something and you need to.
हाँ, ये अभी पाथ कहा जाता है ना. Actually, there are many phases of Mawlana's life. Number one, the first phase is when he was living like a scholastic faqih, doctor of Islamic law, teaching fiqh and shariat to his students. That was
Before he made
first
Shams
phase.
Tabrizi basically.
No, the second phase is his encounter with Shams Tabrizi, Tabrizi or Tabriz, whatever you wish to call him. But this encounter is not unusual. This is not the situation. This is not something rare in the Sufi world. Encounters always have led to an opening in the heart. And even Ibn al-Arabi has presented the concept of the radiant beings. Who are these radiant beings? They are the people who meet you, you come into contact with them, and you are transformed. And those people can be anybody. ये नहीं हो सकता कि वो कोई एक ही किस्म के लोग होंगे. Anybody can do that to any Sufi. देखें इब्न अल-अरबी के केस में एनकाउंटर जो है वो फर्क है. He was 12 years old and his parents, perhaps mother, told him to she sent a plate of halwa to a famous pious woman known as Bibi Fatima. Not that Bibi Fatima. Ibn al-Arabi was a Spanish Muslim. I think that you do know. And it was in Spain that this thing happened. And he took that plate to her house. He had never seen Bibi Fatima. And he knocked at the door, and Bibi Fatima opened the door, and he looked at her, and he was stunned. He forgot to hand over halwa plate to her. And he says that the first encounter, the spiritual encounter, happened when he looked at Bibi Fatima. And Mawlana Shibli does not believe in such traditions. If we try to understand this encounter with the help of our past Sufi tradition, so then what happens? Let me talk a little bit about it. मैं ये कहती हूँ कहने को बहुत कुछ है लेकिन मेरे पास वक्त नहीं है, आपके पास भी वक्त नहीं.
Excuse me, ma'am.
जी, मैं अभी इस पे करती
हूँ. Ma'am, as the point of restlessness and sadness, as I think from Rumi's thought, his one idea was like this: when the Sufi is in a state of meditation.
नहीं, अभी हम उस पे नहीं करते. Let me talk about the encounter, which had been mentioned here. And you have read, if you have read 40 Rules of Love by Aleph Shafak, then it is very much alive in your mind. तो ये जो है ना इसकी जो मैं यहाँ बयान करती हूँ, let me try to describe it in a slightly different way. Mawlana was teaching during his conventional phase of life. He was teaching to his students, and after the lecture is over, he was going out, and there was this wandering dervish, wild-looking young man who came forward and asked him why Bayezid Bastami had one drop from the river of the divine being, and he was intoxicated. And why Muhammad, the Prophet, was not intoxicated. And Mawlana was stunned. He couldn't answer. According to his own written words, he was astonished that he couldn't find the answer to that question. And he stood there stunned for a long time. And it was afterwards that the answer came to him. It took a lot of time to understand what the man was saying. And so, in Sufi encounters, it is the question and the presence and the question, which together make a window, open a window in the heart of the Sufi. ये होता ये है. तो वो किताबों का मसला नहीं है. जो ज़्यादा reliable historians, serious historians जो हैं, Mawlana Shibli, for example, rejects Shafak's story. He mentioned it in his Sawane Mawlana room, but he does not accept it. He says that usually many stories and myths and tales they gather around such great figures. यूँ तो अल्लामा इकबाल के बारे में भी आप यकीनन कई किस्से कहानियाँ सुन चुके होंगे, लेकिन वो उनमें से कितनी जो हैं They are reliable and trustworthy. So the serious-minded historians don't accept everything. लेकिन वो तो करामात और शोक दे और ये चीजें फिर जो हैं फिर भी यकीन करना शुरू करते हैं. That doesn't happen in real life. So I was talking about the different phases of Mawlana Rum's life because the concept of ishq is closely related to his life, actual life. And the first phase was the conventional scholastic doctor of Islamic law. The second was encounter with Shams. And then the question which he couldn't answer, and he realized for the first time that there are so many things which he does not know. He does not understand. He has no answers to several questions. This was the change. Then he sought the sohbat. Then he sought the sohbat of Mawlana Shams. Now sohbat का क्या मतलब है? उसका मतलब यहाँ तो पता नहीं कुछ और होगा, उर्दू लिटरेचर में ज़रा और है, लेकिन फारसी में सोहबत का मतलब होता है exchange of views and communication. Sohbat is sometimes silent. There is no need for the two people who are having sohbat to talk or even to look at each other. Sohbat is a concept practiced by the Sufis. But since we are not aware of our own traditions, this is our problem. Now this is sohbat which had been depicted by the Iranian artist, and in this is Mawlana, this is Shams Tabriz, and Mawlana had said in his verses that when he is with Shams Tabrizi, he is in heaven. He feels the divine presence. For him, Shams Tabrizi was a symbol of the divine presence in his life. Sohbat, and then Shams Tabrizi was lost. Separation, the phase of separation, during which Mawlana passed through great agony, spiritual agony. He has lost the beloved because for him he was the presence of God. Shams Tabrizi, खुदाए मन वो आगे आप दिखाएंगे ना, ये फारसी में आखिर में आपको एक कलाम सुनाएंगे जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि he was like a God for me. He was my God because he was symbol of God. He signified the presence, the divine presence. So he passed through this agonizing phase in which he became very different person, a very, very different person. And he also started composing the verses. Diwan Shams Tabrizi is the production of that phase, separation. And then finally the path, tariqat, spiritualism. When he realized that through ishq one can rediscover the lost divine presence. Now if you are interested, you can write down the following points. Ishq means rejecting the false idols. It is unconditional. Could you please repeat this? Love means rejecting the false idols. It is unconditional. It's not only emotional, it is a form of knowledge. Now this is a very important point which we should keep in our mind because very soon in third lecture we are going to compare Allama-e-Iqbal with Mawlana Rumi. Ishq is not only an emotion, it is a form of knowledge. and it leads to practice. यानी ये नहीं कि मैं किस चीज़ को कहूँ है तो बहुत अच्छी, ये बहुत अच्छा idea है, but I should try to follow that idea or to practice it in my life. If truth is something which is good, then we try to be truthful in our life, according to Rumi. Mawlana Rumi says that. So ishq is that in which there is emotion, then there is a form of knowledge, and then practice. And then there is separation. There is always separation, according to Mawlana Rumi, in those people's life who are in divine love, who are in love with God. They feel separation, and they also feel sorrow, suffering, sorrow, pain. और एक हदीस कुदसी, अगर ये सही है मुझे नहीं पता, आई एम नॉट डॉक्टर इन इस्लामिक academia or academics, लेकिन it has been reported in books कि भाई एक हदीस कुदसी है कि the Prophet said कि अगर तुम मुझसे मोहब्बत करोगे तो दुख और आलाम तुम्हारी तरफ इस तरह आएंगे जिस तरह पानी नशेब की तरफ जाता है. So Mawlana Rumi thinks that separation, sorrow, pain, suffering are essential parts of this experience of love. And in one of his verses he clearly says, he is addressing God, and he says, first, sorrow melted me. You melted me with sorrow, and then you sealed my heart with the seal of love. So sorrow, या जिसको अल्लामा इकबाल ने हिजर फराक कहा है, देखें आप आहिस्ता आहिस्ता you will be discovering the close affinity between Pir Rumi and Murid Hindi, that is Iqbal. And Allama Iqbal has also said that we can't discover the ultimate reality without separation. And he was talking to an English-British professor, and he clearly said that you can't understand our concept of love because you don't experience hijr and faraq and separation. And if you are separated, you don't feel sorry. This is part of the game, they say. And then they move on. But this is not the case in our concept of ishq. This is what Allama said. This is what Rumi is saying. You must have noticed, and you should notice, the close similarity between Allama and Mawlana. Okay, let's move forward. Then there is much emphasis in Mawlana Rumi's thought on silence. And he clearly says, shut your mouth. The words are a barrier between human beings, and they block the truth and reality. He lays more emphasis on listening. Listen. Listen to what the nature is saying, what the clouds are telling us, what the moon is saying, what the sun is saying. Listen. And don't talk too much. As I told you, sohbat is sometimes very silent. And there is no conversation, there is no, even they are not looking at each other. They are just listening. And then he lays emphasis on remembrance of Ahde Alas, pre-eternal covenant. As you know, in the Quran there has been much mention of think, fikr, zikro fikr. That is what the Sufis believe, and this is what Rumi tells us to do. Listen, don't talk too much, listen, and then try to remember and try to meditate. To think means not the logical thinking of Aristotle, but meditation. Concentration on a single being, that is fixation on the idea of the divine being and our relationship with him, the connectedness. And when we are in that state of meditation and concentration, the world recedes. Then there is more probability for us to be in touch with the divine reality. And finally, purification of the heart. And negativity. Then Mawlana crossed all these stations and phases. A direct channel opens between the ultimate divine reality and us. We begin to see and to understand. And when we begin to see and understand, then Rumi's verses are, the window in my soul opens, the book with capital B, that means the Quran. The book arrives to me directly from my original source, because my house is the house of love, and I have opened its windows. Now, strangely enough, it also reminds us of Allama Iqbal. जब अल्लामा इकबाल कहते हैं ना कि कुरान को कारी इस तरह पढ़े कि जैसे उस पे नाज़िल हो गया, तो don't you see the similarity between? कारी नजर आता है हकीकत में कुरान. हाँ, ये the similarity between अल्लामा and Mawlana, and the path जिसको कहते हैं तरीक़त. तो फिर आपके अंदर वो दरीचा खुलता है, that window opens, and you have the direct channel with the divine reality to communicate. And then the Quran is revealed to you. ये नहीं कि उसको हम फिर वैसे ही पढ़ रहे होते हैं मैकेनिकली, जैसे कि हम अमूमन कर रहे होते हैं. वो बच्चे हिल हिल के पढ़ रहे होते हैं ना, वो बड़े प्यारे लगते हैं वैसे.
The way you see the poetry, how they have done the poetry of Rumi and of Iqbal, they are indeed as if it has actually been revealed to them. You know, it's so extempore.
In fact, Iqbal clearly admits that Mawlana had been his guide, spiritual guide. But Rumi tells us that if we follow the path, our perceptions will change, we will be transformed, there will be a metamorphosis. And what is metamorphosis? It is not the metamorphosis of Franz Kafka, who woke up one morning and found himself in the form of a cockroach. Rumi is not talking about that transformation. That transformation is happening in the West. Rumi is talking about something very positive, constructive, in which you are transformed because you become closer, you go closer to divine being. You attain slowly and gradually the divine attributes. If we achieve this stage, then we are very lucky. because all our abilities and our perceptions will be extended in their range and in their quality. We will be able to perceive what the others can't see.
This is what he says, that through this journey you can transcend the ordinary human existence to become a perfect man.
Very good.
This is the stage. This is the final position is the perfect
The last
man.
stage, and not everybody is lucky enough to do the PhD in spiritualism. That is the final last stage. Very few. So, the danger is, like societies, or like Pakistani societies, that we won't be able to differentiate between the genuine and the fake. Now this is a problem. But this was not the problem for the people who were living in the age of Rumi. For them it was not so difficult. Then we have to talk about the purpose of practice. ये इसको practice कह रहे हैं. ये जो मैंने अभी आपको points लिखाए हैं of silence, of listening, of remembrance, of dhikr fikr, meditation. This is the path. And he calls it practice. Now what is the purpose of practice? These are some of the points. If you wish to write it down. Firstly, to receive divine guidance. The goal of practice is to receive divine guidance. Because there are signs in nature and in our being and in our life which have great meaning. But if we don't have developed perceptions, if we are not guided by the path, then we won't be able to understand them. But there are signs for those who understand. The second goal of practice is realization of our human essence. Essence. E-S-S-E-N-C-E. Essence. Jawhar. Asliyat. That of our humanity, of our humaneness. ये उनका मतलब. And to realize that all of us are the sons and daughters of Adam. That means unity, Tawheed. Tawheed for Mawlana Rumi is not only that God is one, the ultimate reality is one, but all humanity is one. That is also Tawheed for Mawlana Rumi. And if somebody has an integrated personality, then that person has also achieved Tawheed. ये भी आप ध्यान में रखें. What goes for metaphysics also goes for ethics and psychology. That is, the principle of Tawheed is not only a religious principle for Mawlana Rumi, it is also a metaphysical principle, it is an ethical principle, and it is an emotional principle. Emotional balance.
There is an American writer and a poet, Emerson. He gave the idea of transcendentalism. So that is also very similar to Rumi because he was inspired by Hafiz and Rumi.
Like Hafiz was a different sort of
But from Rumi's thought, he has taken this idea of this realization of our human essence. As he also says that human beings have this ability of getting closer to God and that achieving that contact, or realizing our inherent ability. For divine powers.
It means when I will talk, if I have time, yes, I have some 15 minutes, about the philosophical aspect and psychological aspect of teachings of Rumi, then I will talk about this, that Tawheed, how he applies in the case of human psyche. Okay, ji. The another goal of practice is transformation of the self or ego. जैसे पहले मैंने बात की है आपसे. If we practice his path, his spiritualism, our personality would change, our perceptions would change, things would change, and then we will have freedom from fear and sorrow.
कुरान वाली बात.
हाँ, कुरान ही है जी. अभी मैं इस पे थोड़ी सी करती हूँ बात. कुरान ही से इंस्पायर हुई. And then it leads to unconditional surrender or tawakkul, complete trust in God. You will not have any fear. It means you have trust in God and you are not afraid of anything. Even those people who were not Sufis, even they practiced the concept of tawakkul. My own father used to tell me that he always tries his best to do certain things, and after that he leaves everything to God. That is not muqaddar, however. You must keep in mind.
That is not predestination.
Yes, there is no predestination, there is no sluggishness, there is no acceptance of defeat. Tawakkul is something different. In this effort, the full effort, but no tensions, because there is somebody who can take care of your affairs. And even if you are defeated, even if you are not successful sometimes, there may be some good reason for it, that it was good for us that we didn't have that job.
Sure.
But the realization we have to perceive, and we have to perceive, and we can perceive if we are practicing certain spiritual discipline like this, the path. They are always talking of those things of which they had been deprived. So with this comes shukr, the state of shukr, thankfulness, and that finally leads to joy. You become not only peaceful and contented, you also can attain joy. And in the case of Mawlana Rumi, we can clearly see when we study his verses that he has experienced the height of joy, ecstasy. All the time he was in ecstasy. It was not because of wine. So with that thankfulness, after that joy, and then ecstasy. सरूर कैफ, ये हाफिज का आपने कहा ना, हाफिज तो सरूर कैफ किसी और वजह से उनका रहता था. He believed in the wine, but Mawlana Rumi does not believe in having that wine. He says love, spiritual love is a wine. And even among the Urdu poets, Khwaja Mir Dard, who was a Sufi poet, clearly said कि मकसूद है वो मैं खिंचती हो जो दिल में, यानी कि मुझे बोतलें न ला के दो, मुझे तो वो मैं चाहिए जो कि दिल के अंदर तैयार हो. And that is the spiritual love. ये.
And that is what Iqbal also talks so much about मैं and मैखाना, and it is all
the metaphor.
Mostly spiritual.
Metaphor.
Exactly.
Now, what Mawlana says about essential Islam. This is the last point today. What he has to say about essential Islam.
Ilama we talking about or
Rumi. I have still been talking about Rumi. Alama की तरफ बाद में आएंगे. लेकिन we will do it very quickly क्योंकि almost the same points are repeated in different ways. He says the Quran is not only meant for the Muslims, but for all humanity. And it is, that is, the Quranic teaching are rooted in the prophetic tradition, in Prophet's tradition. Islam is a state of being and not just an external form. ये उस दिन भी जिक्र हुआ था formalism का, जो कि हमारे यहाँ आजकल it is prevalent and in vogue. Is a state of being, not an external form in which we just perform the rituals without spirit, without real feeling. God is the center of reality. Allah is the center of reality for Rumi. And in Islam, if we truly understand the spirit and essence of Islam, then there is nothing but love, love, love. Because God is love and mercy. When we say the first kalma, what is it? We begin with the name of Allah, the most merciful, the benevolent. Bismillahir-Rahman. And that is the essence of Islam according to Rumi. It is the religion of love, of mercy, of kindness, of affection. And now, actually in one of his verses, which I don't know where I had written, he clearly says that I have sucked, when he was talking about the Quran, I have sucked the marrow of the Quran and the Quranic verses and rejected and threw away the bones. Now with this we come to the end of today's lecture.